Welcome back to our tutorial about how to use the tools and the thinking of the semester in your work. So we introduced, or we have these, I call them identities for your writings, for books or for selections of books or the whole library. And we had seen that we can observe how the understanding crisscross between identities is. So, which means in principle that you have one identity talking something and the other identity is matching to it more or less. So they are friends, so they have to talk something or not. So what we try to establish is this idea that your own writing is a kind of stage play between identities talking in an interesting way, and that you dramatize that. So if these protagonists, they don't understand, it's a not interesting setup or textual writing. So with Adolf Loos, it's always complicated to write good texts, of course, and it doesn't get simpler with these tools. But we can work in a different way, and I would say it's a kind of Copernican way. So you're not laying out the text in a linear way and reasoning things. These identities, they move around and they play actively on stage, and you are master of this setup and you are designing that, and I think that's very interesting. So with Adolf Loos, I think we can start with two concepts. Normally you look at the books, take the words of the title, or go to the table of content, go for the headlines and look which kind of concepts are there. Don't read the book with the first page, just try to understand what this book is about, what the author's motivation for the book is, and look at the primary 3 or 5 concepts this book is using. So for my example here with Loos, it's, I think, this slogan, ornament and crime. So let's have a look what these concepts are. So, and so I prepared 2 functions to do that. So it's an MTP ngram. This is a Google tool. We have this ngram viewer from Google. This gives you these curves in different languages, and they scanned all the books, and then they have the word frequencies in all the books in a lot of different languages. In from 1500, you can ask, for example, for nature and beauty, beauty. So, and you see this is a curve and the prominency of this concept of nature. So we think it's a lot of nature today, but it was in 19th, 18th, 19th century much more in English. So in French, it's different. In German, it's different, and so on. So if you go here, then you also can ask. So it's 1600. So you can ask here for the books in this period about beauty. And here you are. And that's very useful. So I wrote, using this Google database, I wrote some 2 functions which simplify it for your work. Ngram languages. So what is, for example, very interesting is I give an English word, then I can have a list of languages for the prominency of this word. Then I ask it, say the period of time, and then I have two modes, and I will show you that. For example, we go for, if we are with Adolf Loos, we have crime, Verbrechen. So, and we want to have it, for example, in English. We want to have it in German, and we want to have it in French. So, we want it from 1700 to 2018. And the mode, it's either word or text translation. So if we have text translations and he's finding the most proper word in translation, he finds it's just translating a text, so you have a proper word. If you have a word translation, he is looking for a play of words around the foreign language concept, because there's no direct correlation between words. So let's go for text. So we need the most appropriate translation there. So English is crime, Kriminalität in German, and Kriminalität. So, and here you see the prominency of that. So, which is kind of striking, that there is no crime in German or French before 1900, which is the year of Adolf Loos. It is very interesting, but a lot of crime in English. There should be different conceptions here, and different words instead of Kriminalität. For example, we have Verbrechen. So if I look it up with a word translation, then you see crime is correlated to 3 different concepts in German. And you see here, we have crime and this set of Verbrechen and Kriminalität in sync. So now this British crime is not this dominant anymore. But we see around 1900, crime is going down as a concept, and nowadays it's going up again, the prominency of that. So if we go and ask n-gram MTP, n-gram for the concept. So there's another function I gave you. So we have the list of concepts. So we can, for example, ask for Missetat, Verbrechen, Kriminalität. So, and we put it to one language, time, and mode. And mode is absolute or normal. So I'll show you how this works. So we can go here, copy. This is not good. Okay. So then we want to have that in German, and we want to have it from 1700 to 2018, and we want to have that absolute, like this thing. And here you see what we have. Crime or Kriminalität, it's a term which comes up around 1900. It's still not this prominent like Verbrechen. And Missetat is a third, or we can translate it just to show you how this works. So we have a text translation of crime and to German. It's Kriminalität, it gets a 1, and we have a word translation. And here we are with this. So in principle, you can put this here. So it's the same, huh? To German. So if we put, then leave that. Missetat is marginal, so we leave it. So then we have these two curves, and if we put that to normal now, then we put both to 1. We normalize it between 0 and 1. So, and here you see what we have, and that's interesting with Loos. Loos ornament and crime is around 1900, which means if he's using the word Verbrechen, this is the old German word, which is decreasing. So it's an old-fashioned term. He's not using Kriminalität. And what is very important is, in translation, you don't get the difference. Because in English, you don't have. And so in English, you follow simply this line. So in English, it's somehow this line. And in German, I don't know in French, we can check it, but it's this kind of distinction and the shift in conception. So the interesting thing here is Loos is using an old-fashioned term. So now do the same with ornament. So, for example, word translation, ornament, German. Here we see there's Verzierung, Zierat, Ornament, Verschönern und so weiter. So take these and ask how this works. This is a second conception of this pair and this setup of Loos. So Verzierung, Zierat, Ornament. Ornament. Here we see this. We have around 1900. These kind of things. We need to have it absolute first. You see, Zierat is not important, so we simply quit it. So these others are interesting because they are crossing as well. Normal. So, and they are crossing as well, but Verzierung is the old one. This correlates somehow to Verbrechen, and ornament is a new one, and this correlates to crime. So the interesting thing is, why is Ornament und Verbrechen? Why is Loos, and this is his kind of dramatization, why is he using this pair? He would be very simple in line if we would simply say it instead of Ornament, here Verzierung, and then it's in sync. This would be another dramatization, but he's using ornament. So, this is an interesting analysis, and I think we can work with it. And it's especially so in his time, around his time, that these things turned like that. Now, I'm looking for. So these are very specific and conceptions. Now, what is associated with it? And if you're looking for concepts with a similar line, I can show you. With the ornament, well, let's go with Verbrechen. If we go for nature, Natur. Here. I was puzzled. If you go for nature, you see that nature and crime is in sync. That's interesting. So, and Verbrechen, not crime, is in sync. So, if we look for another term which is in sync to ornament, then we have, for example, economy. So economy is a let's check. Ökonomie. It's this. So economy is a concept of post-war. Ornamented this. So this is not matching. So we can't talk about economy with Los, who starts here. This is post-war. But we can ask for Wirtschaft. So this is a little better. So what is going up in this time with Los is the economizer. In English it's economy. It's here. It's going up, the prominency here. And what is going down is nature. So, or we can go for the social. That's very interesting. Sozial. So, the social is going up in his time. Or we can go for Menschenrecht. Very interesting. Oder go for Verantwortung. That's interesting. So, there's a shift from, or we go here, Wirtschaft, Sozial, Verantwortung. So, or we can go for Sozialismus. All these conceptions are in sync. And they start in the time of Los. So let's go here and ask, for example, the lost nature, Natur und Wirtschaft. So, I think this is an interesting abstraction of the very specific setup which is in architecture. And I think Loos is talking about the lost nature and the responsibility to go to economy, something like that. There's a third principal concept addressed in this interview with this fictitious interview with Adolf Loos, delivered by a student, and it's about that Loos, with the age of 60, got convicted with pedophilia. He drew erotic pictures with small girls, and this, I think, especially these days, you can't ignore that. So it's a good idea to address it and to work on this topic. And of course, Loos is a complex personality, and the society was different, but it's serious. So, but to grasp it, I want to just use the same tools as we had for nature and economy, for example. Now go and ask for example, it's they called it at that time it's Unzucht, and we call it today pedophilia. So you see how this works. Pedophilia is a concept we got familiar and got very prominent in recent times, especially I think with social media. It's interesting to see. So it's not that it's not there, all these concepts are super old. It's not that they are not important, but they are not prominent directly. So people don't use this word. They know it, but they don't use it. So there's another concept which is going down over the last 300 years in German. It's called Unzucht. It's getting a little up, so the people got a little sensitive in the time of Loos, but it's going down. So what excessively Loos is using in this game is the concept of, if you make it absolute, then you see Unzucht is much more prominent than pedophilia. So, but if you go, so therefore, in principle, pedophilia is out to describe. So we can't talk with Loos about this. So we had, because he has a completely different understanding of this conception than us. So we have to use other words to address this problem. So what Loos is using excessively is the word erotic. So, and here you see what's happening. Around 1900, this is significant. It established this term, and this is a modern term. It goes with economy, it goes with responsibility, yeah, and it goes with the social. That's interesting. If you go here for normal, then you see it's drastic. So this is a conception Loos is using in his texts. So this is working in sync with what did we have? Criminality, not nature, not ornament, but Wirtschaft and the social. So these are different facets in Loos' world. So if we want to talk with Loos about pedophilia in our terms, we have to learn to do it in these conceptions and make our arguments with these words. Then we get an understanding. We can get provocation and so on, and understand what's going on. Now let's summarize what we found out with the conceptions we want to talk about in our text, with Loos as our main protagonists. So, and we don't want to judge anything, we don't want to find solution, we want to have an interesting conversation, which is interesting for us, which is interesting for the 19th century players. So with Loos as our main protagonist. So I would say our story can look like this. First is we talk about lost nature. So this is, where is nature? Nature. So it's in sync with Verbrechen, the lost nature, and we contrast that with the ornament. So instead of crime, we say nature, and it's a lost nature. So, and we contrast that with ornament of Los. So that would work. So the second, I would start with this, he says in Ornament and Crime, all art is erotic. So let's, to address this phenomena here. So let's say go for art, go for erotic, and then we have to say a lot, we see it here, and then we go for responsibility, Verantwortung. That's interesting and very strange for us today. You see that, huh? The social, Verantwortung, erotic. It's working, and it's all concepts massively getting prominent around Lo's time. So let's responsibility. So the third conception should be on. So we need the counter movement here to get a symmetry. So, and the counter to nature was economy, or Wirtschaft, not economy in German. It's Wirtschaft in German, and in English it's economy. And this is with crime, Verbrechen in German. So then we are in a counter position here, and this is the kernel of our interest. And we wrap it with new conceptions. So we have ornament, the contrast it with lost nature corresponds to crime, ornament to economy, and we crisscross that. So I think this can be our storyline. This, what I'm suggesting, I would go on with this for a new text. There are 1,000 ways you can do whatever you think is appropriate. So, but I think this Longley tutorial shows how you can do research on this, and it shows that the words and the conceptions, they differ from time to time. It's complicated with translation between languages, it's complicated with translation between times and so on. So we always have bodies of thinking with a certain language, with a certain setup of language, with certain dictionaries and so on. It's complicated to understand and to mediate in between. But that's the interesting part. So you can work with it. So, and I think I gave you an idea how this might work. Good, that's it. Next will be that we find other protagonists. So because we now have ornament and crime, this is Los, now we need different positions if we want to make a text. So we need other protagonists playing our, which are able to support our storyline, make it rich. Okay, thanks for watching. See you next tutorial.